save too much room up there.
Okay.
People that don't behave themselves. send it back.
Was anyone here for the last time I was presenting? Yeah, you don't count. You have to be here. Okay, so apparently it went so well, no one came back. All right, so that's always good news. Let me get myself organized here. So I'm going to start this off with a little video. Let me introduce myself. I'm Joe Fahey. People say, are you from Pittsburgh? Or are you from Janesville? No, I'm from Belleville. So those are three different breeds of cat. And just a little bit about my background. Originally from Belleville, but I just retired last year after 45 years of corporate life. Boy, that'll age you if you didn't know. But anyway, so I retired, and then over the last 20 years, I've had responsibility for international marketing and new product development. So through the course of my job, I traveled all over the world, talking to customers and seeing how our products are being used. And just a tremendous opportunity. And tell you what, it's great to travel all over the world and get paid to do it. Oh yes, that's the way to do it. So I've been to 48 countries and really had some great opportunities. And when I retired, I had thousands of pictures. And you think, okay, so what am I going to do with that? So, of course, my first thought was, I'm going to organize these things and for my kids. Nope. The kids don't want this stuff. So okay, plan B, maybe somebody would want to see some of this stuff. And in most cases, there's a story behind it. And it's kind of fun to tell the story. So that being the case, I've developed 12 different presentations of different places around the world. And so now I'm just going out and talking to people like yourselves. I did 2 yesterday, got another one tomorrow. It's great fun and I really enjoy it, so thank you very much. Now, today's discussion is about coffee, bananas, and more. So, anyone here, have you farmed? Anyone? No one's farmed? Okay. Does anyone drink coffee? Oh, okay, all right, now I got your attention. So this one, when you look at all the different presentations I do, most of them about places and exotic places. This is about agriculture. So it's a little bit different, but it's based on the foods that you use every day. Well, where do they come from? Well, we know all about corn and soybeans and alfalfa and all the stuff that we grow around here. But this is the stuff that we consume. And I want to give you a little background on how it's grown, how it's harvested, just to give you a little insight into that. So a little background information. This is all products from Latin America. So we'll be visiting products from Costa Rica, Mexico, Peru, Brazil, Bolivia, and Argentina. So those are the places that I went to and talked to farmers and was actually in the field with them. So I want to start with coffee, because coffee is everybody's favorite. Now, is there anyone here who doesn't drink coffee? Okay, it's kind of weird giving a presentation. I have never had a cup of coffee, all right? So just take my word for it. You figure it out. Okay, anyway, so let's talk about coffee. So, this is by the way, this is a interacting type of presentation where I ask you really tough questions, and I expect full participation. Now, your first tough question is, where does the best coffee in the world come from?
Song says Brazil.
Okay, now I'm going to tell you right now, this is a trick question. Okay, you say Brazil.
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia, okay.
The coffee bean.
Okay, all right, there's always one in every crowd.
Oh, yeah, we have her.
All right, so she has identified herself early, all right? Now, okay, we have Ethiopia and Brazil. Anyone else? Where does the best coffee in the world come from?
South America.
Well, we're talking about South America in general. All right, I'll give you the answer. The answer is everywhere. Every country in the world says, we have the best coffee in the world. So they're very proud of their coffee, and every time someone would come to visit, come to the US to visit and talk to me, they'd bring a big bag of coffee and say, this is the best coffee in the world. Got it. Then I'd give it to somebody else. But everyone is really proud of their coffee and say, we have the best coffee in the world. So, as far as where coffee is grown, there are basically, most of the coffee comes from 5 countries. Okay? Brazil, and Colombia, Indonesia, Ethiopia, and, kind of surprising to me, Vietnam. Okay? So those are the 5 biggest coffee producing countries. And of course, they're all the best in the world. So, I found this interesting. Of course, I'm not a coffee drinker, but the flavor of the coffee is based on the elevation where it's grown. So, if it's at very high altitude, it has fruity, spicy, berry flavor, and this is the Ethiopian, Colombian, Kenya. These are the countries where it's grown at very high altitude, over 5,000 feet. Next is high altitude, where the taste is more vanilla, chocolatey, and that comes from Costa Rica, Java. That Java is Indonesia. Nicaragua. Next is medium altitude, which is smooth and sweet. So you think it's smooth and sweet? That's Brazil. Okay, Brazil produces a lot of coffee. I believe Brazil is #1. Of course, they're also the biggest country, so they should be #1. You drop down to 3,000 feet, smooth and sweet. Here we're talking about Brazil. Low altitude, Kona coffee. I'm surprised no one mentioned Hawaii, because Kona coffee is very popular, and it's almost kind of its own brand, which is subtle, soft, and mild. I don't know what that means. But you coffee drinkers, I'm sure that's very meaningful for you. And then low altitude, simple and bland. So, I don't know, maybe somebody likes simple and bland, but, so I find it interesting that the flavor is based on the altitude. Okay, who remembers Juan Valdez? Yeah, okay. You're all from the Juan Valdez generation. And so, remember the ads? And it was a great campaign, because it made people very conscious of, hey, where was this grown? Is this Colombian coffee? Because Colombian is the best in the world, along with everything else. So, the thing about that ad campaign is, remember they showed commercials of Juan being up in the mountains and picking one berry at a time, and it was hand picked. That was their big deal, okay? And it was that was a great campaign, and most of you remember it. Not many ad campaigns are memorable, so in essence it worked. So we're going to jump to my experience, and this is a coffee plantation in Brazil. And so this is what it looks like. You see, it's kind of rolling hills, and they're planted in rows. So there's a fairly big space between the rows. Now, here are two gentlemen. The gentleman on the left is our distributor from Brazil, and the gentleman from the right is one of our engineers from Japan. So our parent company was in Japan. My job was to try to explain to them what products we need, and they wouldn't believe me. So I said, okay, you get on a plane, I'll meet you in Brazil, and I'll show you, okay? So I had some of my Japanese friends trying to understand the coffee market. So at this particular plantation, I found it interesting that all the plants were grafted. So what they do is first they use rootstock from Robusta coffee, which is, notice how thick the stalk is, so it's much hardier, much more stable, and it has a longer taproot, so it handles dry conditions better. But then they graft on the Arabica stems, and so really you get Arabica coffee, but it gets a superior performance of the Robusta stem. So science at its finest. So this whole plantation was like this, where they were grafted. Now, here's what it looks like when the berries are ripe, and you can see that on each bush there are a lot of berries, like a lot. And so this is how they look, and they're lined up all along the stem. So there are 3 different ways to harvest the coffee. You can do it the Juan Valdez way, which is picking them one at a time. And when you do that, I mean, it's superior in that you only pick the ripe ones. They don't all ripen at the same time. So the problem is, you pick coffee, well then, as soon as you're done, you gotta start over again and pick the ones that have just ripened since you started picking last time.
Oh.
So you're constantly picking coffee, but it's vine ripened. The other 2 ways is to manually strip these things, and you take them all, right or not. And the 3rd way is mechanical, and I'll show you the differences. So at any one time on a coffee bush, you've got ripe, green, and then the dark ones are dried already. So they're in 3 different phases all at one time. So that's why I say it's by hand picking. You just keep doing it over and over again because they ripen at different phases. So this machine that is shown here, it's really unique, and this guy's company invented this. And basically, it's like a string trimmer, but on the end, there's these plastic fingers, and they literally, it looks like 4 fingers and a thumb. And what they do is they just go back and forth like this. And what they do is they take this thing and they just attack the bush and they strip it. And so these fingers are grabbing the berries and shaking them off. Now notice there's a tarp underneath the bush. So it's stripping all the berries off, and they fall on this tarp, and then they just pull the tarp out of there and load it onto a truck. So that's how you manually strip coffee bushes. Now here's the mechanical. You just drive your tractor between them, and the bush goes through here. These are plastic tines, it just beats the hell out of that bush. Like they can't, those bushes can't look forward to this because they really take a beating. But they just drive up and down the lane and just stripping the coffee berries off the bushes. So now you've accumulated all this coffee, and this is all done. This is stripped, and so you've got all different levels of ripeness. So they set it out on a concrete pad like this, all right? And this is what it looks like. You see some green ones, you see some red ones, you see some brown ones, and so they put it out there to dry for a couple of weeks. Now, once it's out there, now you have a guy, and this is kind of a theme in Latin America. There's a lot of manual labor, and manual labor is cheap in Latin America. And so you don't see as much mechanization as you do here because of the cheap labor. Now, so this guy has to just constantly turn the beans, turn the berries, so that, because they're drying in the sun. Now, there's one concerning thing about this. You got this chicken, and okay, we know what chickens do. And I'm not talking about eggs. And I don't know if he's adding flavor or what, but when you look at the ingredients, you may see if there's chicken anywhere on the list of ingredients. Not exactly. Maybe that's why I don't drink coffee. I don't know. Anyway, because I've seen this. So then, after they're dried, they sell them to the local co-op, coffee co-op. This is an incredibly powerful person. This is the taster. And he judges every batch of coffee beans that come in. And this person is highly trained. It's unbelievable the training these guys go through, because they have to learn 36 different aromas. They have to understand the taste, the aftertaste, because they are judging these for their different clients. For example, this co-op, one of the customers they have is Starbucks. Now Starbucks has absolute demand. They don't just go out and buy coffee beans. The coffee beans have to meet certain aromatic and taste requirements. He's got to go through these, test all these beans and say, yes, this is good for Starbucks. No, we're going to send this to Hills Brothers. And so he gets tested. He's certified by the government. He gets tested every 6 months. And it's a very rigorous test. And so he showed us what he does, and it's just amazing. And for every batch, they make these separate cups, and he has to taste all of them. And by tasting, he takes a little spoon and brings it up to his mouth, and basically inhales it with air, and so it atomizes inside his mouth, so that the tongue and the side, all the different taste buds within your mouth, and he's able to judge the coffee, and when it's hot, he's testing for certain flavors. When it's cool, there's different flavors he's testing for. It's really wild, and this is all done manually, and they put a lot of trust in these guys. So, and you can imagine Starbucks probably pays a little bit more than Hills Brothers. So he plays a very important role, and very powerful. So that's my coffee story, and I'm sticking to it. Next, you're probably wondering about this bananas thing. Now we got into bananas a little bit earlier, so I'm going to give you the background on bananas. So my friends from Japan also didn't believe me about bananas. And we make products that, which I'll show you in a bit, that are used in banana plantations. So there's something I have to make very clear. Bananas are not grown on trees. Bananas are grown on plants, okay? There's technically a difference. So these are just very big plants. So one of the things that was asked earlier is about organic versus non-organic. These are, I believe this was a dole plantation. And these are clearly not organic because they bag each bunch. And inside the bag is pesticide because pests are a real problem in growing bananas. So they bag each bunch, but also protects from birds and from wind and from sun. So it serves several purposes. So as you can see, each of the plants, they're in rows, and all the bunches have bags on them. So here's my good friend Gustavo. Gustavo caught a banana weevil, which is one of the problems in growing bananas. Now this is a type of beetle. Now there's a European beetle that we saw quite a bit of down there, and it's called a Volkswagen. Now I had to take this picture because this is what that's our product, okay? And so this guy bought it, and then he tried to shove it in his beetle. And look at, how do you plan on closing your door? Now, I didn't have the heart to tell him, if you take it out of the box, it'll fit. We just let them figure it out themselves. I just thought that was a curious kind of delivery truck that they have. Okay, so this is the type of product that we sell that is used on banana plantations. And what we tried to explain to the engineers is that when you spray banana plants, you can't do it from the bottom because the weevils are sitting on top. And so you've got to, if you're doing it from the ground, the mist has to go up and then drop down on top of the leaves. And the engineers didn't want to believe that. Well, a lot of spraying is done from the air in Latin America. And that's more efficient, but what you learn is efficiency isn't always a big deal in Latin America, once again, because labor is cheap. And also, there is a side motive to that, in that, and this, in a lot of my presentations I talk about this, it's politically beneficial to not automate because it creates jobs. And you need to keep the people employed in order to stay in power. And so it's kind of got serves two different masters. Anyway, so we have to spray for beetles and weevils. And so here is the banana bunch as it's growing. Now, notice there's a blossom at the bottom, and it's big. The blossom's all about this big. And what happens is, as it's growing, bananas don't all grow at once. They grow from the top down. So by the time the bottom ones blossom and start growing, the ones on top are already way past their prime. So timing is a real issue with bananas. And so this blossom has all these young bananas in it, and as it grows down, they flip up, and then the bananas start to grow. Well, what they have found is that it makes no sense to just let it grow to maturity. What they do is they have to cut this blossom off because it sucks energy from the bunch. And so what they do is they generally cut after the third row. So when you look at, when you're ready to harvest, there's only 3 rows of bananas, it's not 10 rows. And the other thing they say is, you have to be really careful when you cut that blossom off, because the sap inside that blossom is blood red, and it's permanent. If you get on your clothes, it's gonna look like somebody stabbed you. So they're always really careful when they cut that blossom off. So here's what one looks like if they don't cut the blossom off. And you see how big these are up here, and these are pretty small down here. So they grow from top to bottom. Now this is how they harvest them. Now notice there's 3 levels, okay, and then this has been cut off. So I'm assuming this guy's a supervisor, and this guy is his underling. It's just a guess. I didn't ask. But you know, it takes a lot of training to be able to wield that machete. So notice he's got a pad that he puts on his shoulder, and they just set the bunch on his shoulder, and then the supervisor cuts off the stem. So he's got this bunch on his shoulder, and he walks to the edge of the row, and there's this rail system, and then with hooks on it. So then he sets it on this rail system, and then I'm thinking this guy is not a supervisor, because he's tied to this thing, and he's like a mule. He's dragging this, well, but it's all on a rail system, so it's not as bad as it looks, but it's bad enough. So he's got a belt around his waist and a cable here, and he's chugging away and pulling all these bananas into the warehouse. Now, these things are processed right there, right on the spot, which I found interesting. They're not trucked somewhere, right there on the plantation. And so, first thing to do is cut them into I'm going to say bunches. That's probably not the right word, but the groups of bananas that you see in the store were probably cut right on the plantation as they were processed. So then they have to be washed because of all the pesticide that was put on them. And then they're broken up and put into individual crates for shipment. Now notice how green they are. The other thing is, because they grow top to bottom, there are 3 different sizes. And so the grading system is extra large, large, and medium. Extra large, they're 8 inches or more. Large is 7 inches, and medium is 6 and below. So when you go to the store, and I play this game with myself all the time, I look at bananas and I guess where on the bunch were these bananas. Because you can, you know, when you go to these expensive stores, the specialty stores that specialize in produce, they've got the big bananas. And you know that they came from the top of the bunch. And if you go to some of the warehouse stores that sell in volume, they're shorter. And those are at the bottom of the bunch. And so there's a cost difference. So you can, next time you go to the store, you can play that game with yourself. Where do you think that banana was on the bunch? Okay, next is cocoa, or it's more appropriate to say cacao. And you're probably wondering, what is the difference? Well, I'll tell you. I'm so glad you asked. Really, really a great interactive crowd here. So, cacao is the proper name for the tree and the pod when it's raw. Now, once it's roasted, it becomes cocoa. All right, so that's kind of the technical difference. So this is what a cacao tree looks like, and the first time you look at it, it's really kind of odd because we're used to like apples and fruit where it grows at the end of the branch. These grow on the trunk, and really close to the trunk. It's really different from what we're accustomed to. So these are green. This is what it looks like when they're ripe. They turn kind of a maroon color once they ripen. Now, when you cut them open, yeah, it's a mucusy, and now they say that it's edible. I'll pass.
Slime.
Yeah, slime. That's a better word. It's very slimy. So the processing is in multiple steps. First of all, you gotta get the goo off, and then you ferment them for 3 days. So after they're fermented, then you dry them, and then you roast them, and then you shuck them, because it's like a peanut, okay? So you have to get what they call the nib that's inside. That's the cocoa. So then you after you shuck them, now you've got the real cocoa, and then you grind it, and then you can make whatever cocoa type of product that you want. So, some of my pictures are a little blurry. Sorry about that. But here I'm holding a number of the raw cacao beans.
Are they edible? Like
Not-
Not yet.
Well, you could, but it wouldn't be a pleasant experience. It'd be like eating a peanut. So you've got to crack them open and get the little nib that's inside. So once again, I was on the plantation, and so they have all these bags of these beans. And once again, processing was right on the plantation. So he takes us into another room, and he's got this big machine, and it's heating and mixing chocolate. And so once you've ground up the nibs, then you add milk and sugar, the contents to make it chocolate. And there were a couple of local guys with us, and he turned to them and said, "Hey, you want to take some chocolate with you?" Well, this is interesting. So he grabbed a plastic bag and he put it under the chute, and he opened it up, and this chocolate pours out. And so just kind of stick your finger in there and taste it, and then he just had a bag of chocolate that he took home. It was pretty good. And they also made candy bars right on the spot. And so you go into the next room, and here are ladies who are packaging candy bars. So I bought a few candy bars, and they never made it home. Go figure. Yeah, I don't know how that happened. I think customs took them. Anyway, so it was just interesting to me that on these plantations, everything is processed right there. Now, of course, they still ship chocolate and whatever, but it was pretty vertically integrated. Okay, sugarcane. Next topic. This is what sugarcane looks like when in the field, and notice. Okay, the stalk is what you're looking for in the sugarcane. Now notice all the dried junk and leaves, and it's pretty messy. So there are a couple ways of harvesting this. First of all is mechanical, and this is kind of like what we've been seeing for the last 2 months, You know, when they're chopping corn out in the field, you've got a tractor with a wagon following along, and it's hard to see, but you see they're just bits of cane about this long, going into collected in the wagon. So that is the ecologically sound method of harvesting sugarcane. Now, in my trip, I was in Bolivia, and I landed, after I got off the plane, I thought, man, there's something wrong here. Something doesn't feel right. And it dawned on me that, God, it's like smog. And man, this is Bolivia. There should not be smog in Bolivia. I lived in Los Angeles for 10 years in the 80s. I know what bad air looks like. I know what bad air tastes like. And that was bad air. So it took, for a couple of days, it just wasn't registering. Okay, finally it registered. They were burning the cane fields. And so when I talk about being ecologically correct, this is horrendous. So you asked about in the U.S. I can't imagine that's allowed anymore. The EPA would never allow burning cane fields, and it's very labor intensive. So just from a cost perspective, it's probably easier to spend $200,000 on equipment than it is to pay guys to harvest sugarcane. So they go out and they burn all those dead leaves, and this is what it looks like after the fire. So this guy has got a machete. It's kind of hard to see. So he's just lopping off the stalks, the cane, and throwing in a pot. So that's the Bolivian way of doing it. Now, what you find as you drive along the roads, and Bolivia is a third world country, you saw a lot of this. Anybody know what that is?
Press.
It's a cane press. Very good. And so you run stalks of cane through there, and you get juice. And so there are all these roadside stands where they'll squeeze some cane for you, and you have the juice, or they'll sell you a bag of these bite-sized bits of sugarcane. So I have a quiz for you. Guess who fell for that? Oh, you're right. I fell for it. Bought a bag, and it didn't come with instructions. So I popped it in my mouth and started chewing on it. Oh, oh. It's like throwing a branch in your mouth, and you start chewing on it, and just the texture was, I couldn't get it out fast enough. So you're supposed to put it in your mouth and just chew it a little bit, suck the juice out, and then spit out the branch, which it felt like. I'll pass. I'll go right for the bag of refined sugar. So, but anyway, that's very popular, and I'm sure people are much better at it than I am. So that's the story on sugarcane. Now, while we were in Bolivia, and once again, I'm sorry for the crappy picture. I'm going to blame my phone. But one of our dealers was having a grand opening. And he has a brand new store. Now, we sell power equipment and handheld power equipment. And he was very proud of this new store. This was his old store.
Oh.
So he moved 20 feet, but now he had a concrete floor. This is a big deal. The local radio station was there. there were balloons and a big festival. I was interviewed on the radio, and no, I don't speak Spanish. So I don't know how that really came over, I didn't ask. Anyway, it was a big deal, and you're participating. And there was a custom, whenever you travel internationally, you try to observe and not embarrass your hosts. You know, you kind of try to do what they do and not. So they were serving champagne. So everyone was given a glass of champagne. And I always watch what's going on before I imbibe. And so this is just, it wasn't this picture, but this is just a placeholder. All of them took their glass of champagne and just spilled some on the ground. And I said, okay, why do you do that? Because it's an offering to Pachamama, which is Mother Earth. So Mother Earth gets the first sip before you get one. And I thought, that's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. You know, and here in a third world country, they recognize the importance of what's wrong. Now, of course, they're burning cane at the same time. So you're poisoning Mother Earth. But that's another story. But I thought it was just kind of a beautiful thing. And you know, maybe we could be doing a little bit more of that. So next we're going to talk about the Pampas. And the Pampas basically spreads between Argentina and Brazil. And the Pampas is another term for prairie. It's flatland prairie. And there are a number of prairies around the world. Now, in North America, we call it prairie. In South America, it's called pampas. In Africa, it's called the veld. In Asia, Russia, it's called the steppes. And in Australia, it's called the downs. But it's all the same thing. It's flat prairie land. And it's very good for growing, for agriculture. Now, when you get into southern Brazil, Argentina, they get 2 crops a year of corn and soybeans. Can you imagine if we could get 2 crops a year? And their seasons are the opposite of us. And so their first crop is their major crop, and the second crop is shorter. So it's not as good as the first crop. But still, they're getting 2 crops. And so in the Pampas, wheat and grains are also very, very popular. And now, okay, I showed you the third world manual labor. Okay, now we're in Brazil and Argentina. Now this is big time stuff. So they've got the big equipment. This is the commercial farming that really we're accustomed to. Now, I was there because this gentleman is using one of our products, and they said, hey, this thing isn't powerful enough. They use a handheld blower to blow all the chaff off of the air intake. And so they had to stop every once in a while and just blow all the chaff off. And they said, hey, this is not enough power. Well, based on this trip, we went back and we developed a blower specifically for Latin America. And it kind of helps that they don't have any air emissions requirements. But that was the outcome of this particular visit. So it was very helpful. But anyway, the Pampas is very advanced and very mechanized.
Excuse me, were you able to fix it?
Yeah, we took the emissions up, and the performance goes up. But I didn't say that, okay? but I'm retired, I guess I can say that. And that really solved it for them. Now this one, asparagus. Anybody see asparagus in the store these days? Okay, think it comes from Wisconsin?
Sometime.
Not today. Take a look. It probably came from Peru. Now, this is a this is pretty fascinating. Peru, and I put this map on for you. It's really interesting how the country shakes out as far as the weather or geography, because this is the coastline, and this is severe desert. So it's just bizarre for me. We would drive down, there's a road right along the coast, and on your right is the ocean, and on your left is the driest desert in the world. You know, total water, no water. It's really struck me as odd. But then here you've got the Andes Mountains, and on the other side of the mountain is the jungle. So, you know, we've seen that where air goes up over the mountains, and when it comes down, it drops all the water. So you go from super arid to jungle with the mountains. Now, by the way, here is Cuzco, which is where Machu Picchu is located. And I happen to do one in Machu Picchu too. So if you want to know how that goes, let me know. Anyway, so extraordinarily arid here. Now you think, you can't do anything with that, right? Wrong. You grow asparagus. Look at that. These are asparagus feet, and there is nothing green except asparagus. Now, why do you think this is? Well, I had to read about it. I had to have it explained to me. There's a reason for this, but it pays a huge toll. This is the perfect location for growing asparagus because it has a mild temperatures all year round, and they can grow asparagus 12 months a year. Now, there's a reason for that, because obviously this is all irrigated, and when the asparagus gets to a certain height, they shut off the water. And when you shut off the water, it goes dormant. So you've got this huge field of dormant asparagus. And so when you're ready to pick some, you just turn the water on and it starts growing again. So every month, you just turn the water on in different parts of the field. So you've got asparagus coming. That's why you get asparagus in the stores right now. I checked myself about a week ago, and I grabbed asparagus, a product of Peru. Now, that sounds great, right? They are draining the water table enormously, where cities nearby, I mean, it's going dry. And so there are some places where they've switched to other crops because the water table won't, it's not sustainable. This is not a sustainable practice. So don't know what the future of this is, but I'm thinking they can't do this forever. So, and then this is what the fields look like. You know, they had turned the water on in this particular section, and they're harvesting the asparagus. So next time you're in the store, check to see where the asparagus came from. And right now, it probably came from Peru. Now, of course, you have to have weed control. And there are many different ways to control weeds in Latin America. And we're going to start from the highest level to the lowest level, right? So Argentina and Brazil, Hell yes, you've got the big sprayers. This is all commercial grade stuff. Now this is in Mexico. This guy's got one of our sprayers in a 100-foot tube, and he and another guy are walking up and down the rows with hazmat suits on, spraying. Okay, that's one way to do it. But you can still get a lot done this way. Then you've got the one row at a time guy, who's it's pretty labor intensive. And then you hire a bunch of guys with hand sprayers, and you have them march up and down the field. You know, once again, labor's cheap, and if you don't have to buy expensive equipment, you can just hire a bunch of guys to walk up and down the rows and spray by hand. And if all else fails, bring in the goats. Now this only requires one guy. He just has to make sure they eat the right stuff. So goats are always come in handy in a pinch. Now I did want to touch a little bit on exotic dining in Latin America. So I stopped in at a buffet in Brazil. Okay. This is wood fired, and so it heats up the stones, and he just has pots of beans and rice and different kinds of meats and vegetables. It was great. It was absolutely fabulous, and I had to go compliment the chef. But I found it interesting that you know, this is just all wood fired. This is right in the dining area. This is not in the kitchen. So you just grab your plate and you walk up there and you start loading up. It was really a great experience. This is in rural Brazil. And then we got really rural. And this was at a trade show on a coffee plantation. So they built a stove, and she's making kind of a stew there. And so we sat down with my Japanese friends on this table that's hacked out boards, and I tell you, that is fine dining. It was really good. Very rustic, but you really appreciate, it was really well done. And finally, when you're in the jungle, you should never go thirsty, because you can always take a coconut and take your machete and cut off the top, and there's sweet water inside. And I know that because I learned it from Gilligan. How do you think Gilligan survived all those years? He knew what he was doing. So he's my hero. So with that, gracias. Thank you very much for spending an hour with me. And I really appreciate it. Only good ones.
Okay, so the sugar cane, they didn't have their own processing plant there.
No.
So where does most of it go, and then when they process it, what happens to all, there must be a tremendous amount of waste of the cane.
I was asked that earlier.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, that was offline.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, it's, first of all, I don't know where the processing is done, but as far as the residual, you know, anything that's squeezed for juice, oranges, grapefruit, you know, you have lots of leftover. And so, you know, typically farms find applications for feedstock. I mean, I would think that this would make really good feedstock, but yeah, there can't be a ton of juice in every stalk. So I don't know exactly what's done, but I'm just imagining it just like everything else that gets squeezed for its content. There's lots left over.
Question about bananas.
Mm-hmm.
I had heard at one time that each, well, I thought it was a tree, but now I know it's a plant.
No, it's a bush.
Plant, just has one crop,
Yeah.
and then they have to cut it down or whatever, plant another tree. That's true.
No, no, comes back for the next crop. Yes?
Does Hawaii produce more sugar cane than Brazil, or does most of it come from third world countries?
Just from size, you know, Brazil, Argentina, they are, it's so big. Brazil is so big. I mean, we would drive for hours and hours and hours, and all you'd see is soybean fields. You know, it's on a scale much more than what we see. So when you think of Hawaii, you know, there's only so much farmland
Yeah.
in Hawaii. So just from scale,
Oh, okay.
it would have to be Brazil and Argentina. But also, you know, it goes into Bolivia, that whole area.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Yes?
I missed the first few minutes. Did you say where you worked?
You missed the best part. Because I talked about me.
That's what I want to hear.
Yeah, I was in corporate life for 45 years. Last 20 years I was with, you may know the brand Echo, chainsaws and blowers and all that good stuff. And for North America, we made those things, you know, hedge trimmers and for lawn and garden. But for Latin America, our products are used for agriculture because it's manual. And so we had agricultural clientele. So I was responsible for international marketing and new product development. So I spent a lot of time flying all over the world, talking to customers. And then I end up with 12 different presentations. See, that's how it works.
I have one more.
Yep.
And you may have, I came in late, I apologize. But the other day they had an article on the news about how they're starting to move certain crops north, like oranges or whatever, out of Florida or up to Georgia. Global warming. So how do you see global warming affecting the, you know, what's going on down there? Or
You know, I don't, that's a tough one to answer. I don't see it immediately affecting them. I think the bigger issue for them is just the practices that aren't sustainable.
okay.
For us, yeah, that's an issue, but I think they have bigger issues. You know, it's an issue of priorities. And asparagus, you can't do that. Burning cane, you can't do that. But it's hard to change. You know, when this is their livelihoods. You know, it's kind of like the rainforest thing. It's really hard to stop. So anyway, they've got bigger issues.
And you have to respect them, you know, because that's what their lifeblood, yeah.
It's a tough one. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And you know, when you tell someone you can't live like this, okay, then what?
Yeah.
So it's obviously a tough question that doesn't have a clear answer.
Neither do we.
But you know what? We love asparagus in November. You know, so we're kind of part of the problem.
Just like the fruits was there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you look how many of your fruits.
Yeah. But not in the winter.
Yeah, there's cold storage, there's technologies that, but you know, stuff we get now doesn't taste as good as it did 5 months ago. It's the right color. Doesn't taste all that great, but anyone else? All right, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.